What if I told you that you could have a six-figure launch while operating at just 50% capacity and still show up in your marketing as your full self? My guest today, Mariela De La Mora, did exactly that. Mariela is a leadership and business coach who helps first generation entrepreneurs and women of color turn who they are into their greatest advantage. In our conversation today, she shares how she ran a six-figure launch at low capacity. And we also talk about why your identity, your story, and your lived experiences might just be the most powerful marketing strategy you have. Honestly, this is probably one of my favorite conversations, and I'm so glad that I get to share it with you all today. So, save this episode, share this episode, and get ready to take notes from my conversation with Mariela. When we talk about growing a business, the conversation, it honestly usually revolves around strategies and numbers and even a bit of mindset. But honestly, behind every strategy is a human that is actually bringing that to life, which is why I'm so excited that I'm bringing on someone today where we can talk about what is beyond just the strategy and the numbers and the mindset. Today, I've brought on Mariela, who has just such a powerful perspective on business, on leadership, and not just in terms of how you run your business, but how you guide yourself as someone who has multiple identities, whether you're a caregiver, mother, someone who just has lots of life going on. And so, through this conversation today, I hope that you are taking notes. I hope that you are just prepared to see what it fully takes to not only run a business, but run it in a way that's actually going to be supportive of you. So, Mariella, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you, Danielle, for having me. I'm so excited for this discussion. There's so much here.
No, we were talking a little bit before, and I was just like, oh, this conversation is going to be good. We can go in so many directions, but we're going to keep it focused and it's going to be really purposeful and meaningful. But before we really get into this, I'm super excited for it. How about you introduce yourself to everyone just so that we can see your perspective and where you're coming from, which I think is going to really help ground this conversation that we're about to have?
Yes, absolutely. I'm Mariela, and I am a leadership and business coach. I work primarily with daughters of immigrants and women of color. I've been in business for almost 6 years now. And prior to becoming a coach, I was a marketer for 16 years, primarily in like story-driven brand building. So a lot of what I did was kind of come into product suites and sort of give them a fresh story, a fresh angle, rebrand them, make them more human, which is very interesting because when I left in 2020, and I knew that I was going to leave because at a certain point in corporate America, being a single parent in corporate America just doesn't mix. One thing that I told myself was if I'm going to start a business, I don't need to start a business. It's not like I started a business because like I couldn't make enough money in corporate. It's just what it was costing me. One of the things that I said was like, I never wanted to hide who I was, like silence myself or water myself down the way that I had to in corporate. So I think a big part of it was like, how can I build a business that allows me to be myself, not just as a Latina, but like also as a single parent. And so that's a big part of now the lens that I bring into my work. It's like, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, how can you still bring yourself into your business and not just make it acceptable, but make it like an advantage. So it really guided like my lens of work from like the very beginning. And so now that's why I focus on thought leadership and making people, creating your most competitive advantage through your story and your thought leadership and your lived experiences. And so, yes, that's me. I'm a single parent. My daughter's 8, and there's so many roles, like you said, that I juggle in being a business owner.
If you all aren't following her on Instagram, you should definitely do that right now. I'm going to link all of that in the show notes. But she's a fantastic person to follow, to learn from, who really shows what that means to really put herself forward, have and show her identities, and have that be one of her top assets to really grow and thrive her business. So, like, this is going to be a good conversation, marketer to marketer.
Yes.
And so, really, where I want to start off at is just the life portion of it. I think that we create our business, like you said, for many reasons. You said that you didn't have to from like a money making standpoint, but you need it to from a life standpoint of what you wanted to do. And
Yes.
so when you have a business, like how do you navigate working hard to have the business that you want that helps you to live out your goals while still balancing all of those identities? How do you do that?
I think a big part that people don't always ask themselves is like, what is my definition of success? Like, what's my version of success? Because it really does look different for different people. And I think that if we lose the answer to that or we don't ask it early on, we could start chasing what other people's versions of success are and then end up either not enjoying the journey or it winds up not being sustainable. So I think that part of how I've been able to, like, the lens that I brought into my work was very much like, I did this because I wanted to do work that I actually believe in, that matters, that allows me to be myself, but that also like honors me as a human and as a mom, meaning like I don't want to have to compartmentalize like the way that I feel in order to go to the office. I don't want to have somebody pick up my daughter from school and like practically put her to bed by the time I get home. Like I want to have control over my time. And so I have actually said no to money a lot in order to say yes to other things. And I think that if I didn't do that, I would have said yes to a lot of things that other people were doing. And then it wouldn't have actually like allowed me to have a business for the reasons that I wanted to have it in like the first place. And I can talk more about that because I think for me, it really influenced my business model. And then obviously, like depending on your business model, your marketing has to look a certain way to support your business model. And there's business models that I on purpose did not choose, which was like high volume, growing your audience a ton, like these low ticket, high volume offers. I was just like, I want to be, I don't want that. So I think that's a big part was like really being anchored into like, what's my version of success and like, why do I have a business in the first place? You know?
No, that's really important. I remember talking to clients, and they were trying to be very intentional of how they wanted to grow their business. They were
Mm-hmm.
new mothers. I have other business owners who are caregivers to older parents, and the way that they need to run and function their business, like it has to really be centered on the life that I'm currently living, what I need to do,
Yeah.
and the marketing, like you said, to that point, needs to be able to support that. Because I have people that are just like, I can't carve out all this time to film and batch all of these reels and do all those things. I can't do that. I need to
Yeah.
be able to do something where if like I have a child breastfeeding and like I can like voice note something out and
Mm-hmm.
maybe like transcribe and type something. Like I don't, my space, my face, like I can't do that. And
Yeah.
so for you, when you're thinking about like, okay, the business model, the marketing that needs to go into place, how are you thinking about that in a way where it's just like, this is something that I can keep up? How have you been able to decide like, yep, this is going to work for me? Or how have you trialed and errored and been like, I thought it was, but maybe not?
Yeah, yeah. So I think that it's funny because I don't know that in the beginning I thought as much about like I don't know that I was actively thinking about like a business model or anything. I just was thinking there were a couple of things that drove me. Number one is that I actually six figures is just the starting point because like in San Francisco technically it's considered low income, which is wild. If you make like 130K here, it's like this. So for me being a single parent, I was just like, okay, this actually needs to be like profitable soon in order for me to see a trajectory to leave my job and like so all of that. So I think I was driven by profit, but from a place that I can like feel anchored about it. And so I think that some of the things that I kind of brought into this work was like, what is it that I like, what is a problem that I can solve that's very like unique that not a lot of people can speak to? Because I think that within that world you almost position yourself in like a class of your own, you know? And so I think a lot of what I did at the beginning was like, rather than trying to pick like a very broad need and compete in the broad need, for example, like if I were to say grow your social media following, it's just like, yeah, in 2019, 2020, I'm like, you would be a dime a dozen. So I got very specific very early on, I think, in terms of talking to like business owners with marginalized identities and how that affected their relationship with visibility and marketing in their business, and started to get very, very curious about a specific type of person early on. And so I think that's how I was able to do that, and then say, like, let me become an expert in a very niche need that is unmet. Like, so talking to an unmet need versus a broadly aware need that lots of people are competing in. It was kind of like, yes, there's other business coaches, or yes, there's other leadership coaches, but like not everybody is actually creating processes, approaches, strategies, like actual tangible approaches that are different for a specific demographic of people. And to me, that was the only work that was worthwhile doing, because I'm just like, it really, really matters to me who I help and why I'm helping them. So I think that's how I was able to take a very niche, like, role or a niche business, but then bring a lot of myself into it as well. Which I think some people could see as like a risk, but like, I think it also meant that when people found me, they were just like, I've never heard anybody talk about the things the way that you talk about them. And so I think there's a trade-off there, for sure, in terms of how like I approached it, and like just being guided by doing work that matters, high profit, and also knowing that I'm somebody who really values like depth versus like, I don't know if it's like depth versus breadth. Like, I remember dreaming, like, I want to have clients that I work with for years. Like, I want to have this long-term relationship with the people that I work with. And so high ticket also, lends itself to being able to work very, very intimately, like with your people, versus kind of creating a more like scalable or surface level solution, which is totally fine. It's just like, I'm a deep girly. Like, I want to get in there with my clients.
No, yeah, and that makes so much sense from that standpoint, and I think that obviously because you do have a marketing background and being able to kind of think that way, that lends itself to being able to go in that direction. But I
Yeah.
think that also when you're coming up with a business, whether you have that type of background or not, I
Yeah.
think knowing what's really going to be purposeful and meaningful for you is so important. I've seen so many
Yeah.
people who have said that, okay, I want to hit this goal, I want to do that, but it doesn't actually mean anything to
Yeah.
them. And they keep thinking about, why can't I hit this goal? Why can't I go after it? And
Yeah.
I think it's because of like the identity that you have either towards it or your actual true
Yeah.
feelings about that. So I would love to hear your
That's a good
take. Like,
point.
how have you seen that play out? How meaningful is that when you're actually going after and building out the business that you want to have?
Yeah, I think that when you said about how like when we're led by wanting to hit a goal, that can be like great and ambitious. But I think that when we think about the fact that our revenue is really just a byproduct of us solving a specific type of problem, and solving a need, that's literally how any business makes money. And I think that when we are, the more deeply rooted we can be in like, okay, yes, we want, if you want like a 500K business, you're like, okay, but what does it look like to solve $500,000 worth of problems in a year? And does that look like solving the same person's problem in different seasons of their life over years? Is that how much of that is going to be repeat business? How much of this is going to be entry level, like lower ticket? How much, like, what does this look like to solve that? And I think that when we spend more time with that, that's when we actually make it tangible. Otherwise, we're just like hitting the goal, but it's not like rooted in anything. Because when you really think about it, I'm like, we got to math it, then we got to market it, we got to think about like, what does this actually look like for you to be the person that supports that kind of marketing engine? Like, that's going to look real different. And so when people can't hit the goals, sometimes it's like either you didn't think enough about like what does it actually mean to hit it in the way that you want to hit it. And when you do, the goal kind of naturally, not to say that automatically does, obviously there's a lot of like fine tuning, but I think that it really does matter, like, what does that actually mean to solve that need that happens to produce that revenue, and then working backwards to be like, what does that look like operationally, what does it look like in your marketing, and then what does that look like to be a person who's serving X number of clients at these different price points, because that's going to look really different. Like, for me, I don't work with a large number of clients, but I work with a lot of them for years and years, and it's depth, versus I could have the same income level and serve 5 times the number of clients and like membership, and that would look really different. And I also wouldn't want that, at least not now. So I think that that's important to root into, like, that our goals are really just a byproduct of solving a need. And so that's the case for any business, you know?
When it comes down to it, like you said, it's the balance of like what works for you. You said that you're about the depth and it's
Yeah.
the like low volume but high impact as far as like the relationship and their
Yeah.
lives
Hmm.
versus, something else. And it's not to say that one is better than another.
No.
It's just what is best for you and how you know that you can serve.
Yeah.
And I think when you're building that up, when you're talking about, okay, how do I actually grow this? I know it's something
Hmm.
that we were talking about a little bit before. It's just like some of your identity that you bring
Yeah.
into that and like
Yeah.
leveraging how do you think about things and how do you want to put that out there so you can, whether it's high volume, how are you putting your message out there so that high volume people are just like, yes, I need that, or how are you putting
Yeah.
it out there where you're just like, no, I'm looking for depth and I'm looking for this type of person. So
Yeah.
what has been your approach to defining what that looks like, defining your thoughts, defining how you can put that out there in a way that's like, no, it's good for me and it's attracting the right people.
Yeah. So I think that there's certain concepts that like probably for example like I talk a lot about thought leadership and I could tell you kind of and anyone listening like how I define it and how that could actually have worked in different business models, but I made it work for me as somebody who wanted to be more of a mentor slash like consultant, because I think about how like there's some people will work with people because they want to get a certain result and it's more about like what the person knows. And I think that lends itself more to lower ticket offers where you don't have as much proximity to the person and you really are buying a packaged solution, and there's so much importance, like we need those sorts of offers in the world, right? But I led with my identity and my story and my vulnerabilities and a lot of like my lived experience and my insecurities, like all those things, because I really wanted a client relationship where I was a mentor as well. And the way that I define mentor is kind of like guiding the person through that season of life, not just like the person's goals. So I think because I wanted to support people in their life and in their identity, the person behind the goals, I also had to bring the person behind the goals or the business to people as well, for them to feel like they knew who I was and what I was about. So I think I have always been like a very like vulnerable and like my brand has been very vulnerable and transparent, like I think from the beginning. Not just because I thought that's what my clients needed, but because I think that was part of me feeling like I didn't have to perform in my brand because I had to so much in corporate. Like I literally was like a different person when I walked in the door.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but it happens to also work when people are choosing someone based on who they are, not just what they're good at or what they know, because they want to be guided in who they're becoming as well. So I think that's kind of what ended up, and I wasn't actively thinking this at the beginning, but now I realize like when people work with me for years, it's because of that. It's like, yes, I can always meet them at a different place in their marketing or their growth, but they're literally like, no, you're the person guiding me. Like I can't imagine doing this without the person guiding me. Otherwise, I kind of feel like you run out of things to focus on or talk about,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So
Mm-hmm.
that's a big part of like how I've marketed with my identity, but also have people that are buying that for themselves as well because they want someone that can help them to make that transition and define like who is it that I need to become in this next season in order to, have my definition of success, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. And no, it's a good point because you have shared a lot of different things about your story and your experience. And one of the things that I was really moved by when you talked in detail about your experience with burnout and your experience
Mhm.
of just like running your business not at like that 100%
Oh yeah.
capacity. And
Mm.
I think that a lot of people believe that their highest self is always running at 100.
Oof.
And I think that's a tough place to live because even
Mhm.
machines their factory settings are like, don't run it to like top
No.
like don't do that. Like they literally say that all the time. And these are machines. We
Yeah.
are people. We're way
Yeah,
more complex and nuanced. And
absolutely.
so I would love for you to talk a little bit about like what that season taught you, what that how you've grown from that, and just like
Oh,
new directions that you're taking because of that experience that you've had recently.
oh yes. So it really, I'll tell you kind of what the burnout season was, what brought it on, because it isn't what you typically would hear around like a burnout. And then I'll tell you kind of what it taught me about what I want to double down on. Like it actually made me very grateful that I built the business the way that I did, because I was able to kind of go on like a half sabbatical. It's like I was still running a mastermind, I was still serving private clients, but I got to pull back and I got to like be human without like everything just being trashed. Like I still have a life, I still need to pay bills, I still pay San Francisco rent, like it's still, life had to continue on. But my season of burnout, which I didn't recognize it as burnout for like the first, I would say like 6 or 7 months. Like that's actually how long you could be in it when you're high functioning. And
Hmm.
it's because we get told that burnout is a result of overworking. But I'm very good at overworking. Like I've overworked my whole life. Like I've had years where I worked 80 hours a week. I buried my feelings through working. Like I'm just very good at overworking. And so that wasn't what brought on the burnout. It's funny because I had to redefine like how do I use working as a coping mechanism. What actually brought, and I didn't know this at the time, which is why I did not recognize it. Um, what brought on my burnout was that in retrospect, it was the first time in my life that I actually truly believed in my body that I would never have to worry about money. And it happened because I had like the biggest launch I ever had. It was like $176,000 launch, and it was such a huge identity shift. Like I had a retreat in Mexico City. I had to book the location before I knew how many people were even going to go, and I was like, if it's me and 3 people, I'll be really happy. And I just really made this decision from this identity of like, I don't care, I believe in it, I love it, I'm super stoked, whoever's coming with me is coming with me. And when it worked, it was like way more than I ever thought. At the time I just was like, oh, I don't know like what else to say. Like now I have all these people depending on me, and then it became like I'm terrified that I'm going to disappoint them. There's too many people. I've never had a group so big that maybe not everybody's going to get coached. People are going to secretly hate me, and this was all of like my high achiever, people pleasing perfectionist tendencies was like faced with, you could lose it all and everyone could hate you and be mad at you, and like you're never going to hit this number again. So I pulled back, and it was kind of like the burnout wasn't because I was working so hard. It was kind of like I was just really high functioning until I didn't have to be. And then my body's like, whew, okay, well, we actually don't need to make money for the rest of the year if we didn't have to. And granted, my bank account and me was like, hang on, we do. We actually do, though. But I had been holding on to that, like what surfaced for my whole life. Like from growing up with immigrant parents and like not having money to being in two marriages where my partners were financially unstable. And so like it was really like delayed burnout that hit me because I felt safe enough to fall apart. And I think what happened during that time was like you'll see publicly, like not a lot of people would even notice. Like I literally stopped marketing, and then I had some small, much significantly smaller launches that summer, which in retrospect, I'm like, yeah, it totally makes sense because I didn't really fully want the clients. A part of me was like, whoa, hold on.
Hmm.
And but when I found out, like this was through coaching, it was like I was seeing my somatic therapist, and in coaching, they're like, this kind of sounds like depression and like a form of burnout, but it's more like emotional burnout. I at the time was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I can't perform and mask. Like I feel like everybody's gonna see me and be like, oh, she fell off, like what happened, even though literally nobody was thinking that. So I think what I kind of allowed myself to do, and this is where I'm like happy that I had this business model, was that even when I wasn't promoting my services, I still had private clients like reach out and want to work with me. And because I had a 5-figure offer, it allowed me to, between my launch that wasn't so big and then private clients still reaching out, I still was okay. And so for me, high ticket, high trust has allowed me to be human. It's allowed me to fall apart. It's allowed me to kind of like ghost on my marketing, even when I had a whole ass team that could have helped me put stuff out the entire time. Like I did it subconsciously didn't want to, but I still was able to be financially okay because I chose a business model that I still had clients renewing with me. So it was kind of like you would never know, but I have clients that I've been with for years. They renewed, new people signed up. I was fine. Granted, it was a scary time financially. I had to live on my reserves, but it showed me like this is why you have this business model. It's very forgiving. It's very nervous system friendly. It's very like trauma friendly while I recovered from burnout. And then when I went into my next launch, because I'm a marketer, I was able to be like, how do I run this launch on C minus capacity? And that's what I did. And I can talk a little more about that, but by the time I pushed my launch out and actually went and did it, and it wound up being a 6-figure launch, I was like, if I did a quarter of the output, because I literally cannot creatively think, I can't think, what would I do if I could only do like a third of the things that I've done in the past? So I produced way fewer assets in this launch than the launches that sold 3 people total. Like it's wild. I did so freaking much. I did the most on the launches that I sold the fewest people. So it just really taught me like, okay, we gotta reassess. So that's my burnout story. And it made me even more happy to have like the trust that I have built, I think, with my people.
There are so many avenues that I think I could go with that. One, I just want to reflect that success burnout, which is I think essentially is
Yeah.
kind of what it is.
Yeah.
Like I've experienced something very similar where it's just like, okay, like you're making the most money that you ever have, people are coming in, and then all of a sudden you look around, you realize, oh crap, I've made the most money like ever. Like
Uh-huh.
what's happening, what's going on, and then like for me, my experience was like I kind of froze for a second because I
Yeah.
was fine ish because money was there, and then it
Mm-hmm.
got to a point where you're just like, oh crap, no, I'm not fine anymore. Like what's happening, what's going on, and it like
Yeah.
creates like this little spiral, and it takes a minute to get yourself out of that. And so I think that you're
Yeah.
right. A lot of people don't. They think that it's overworking, and it is usually not overworking. Like it is working, and that's the issue,
Yeah.
which I think is so interesting. Just to share that's another
Yeah.
side of things that I don't think people, like you said,
Yeah.
talk about.
It could be like it's like post over functioning burnout, you know? So it's kind of like if you hadn't, like, I think about how, like, I had, you said that, like, okay, machines, we need to shut them down too. And so, like, why wouldn't we need to shut down humans? It's almost like I got away with, like, not restarting my laptop for years. And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, now we can actually, like, have a whole system error that's going to make you have to reboot it
We're gonna
because
do a
we couldn't
force
do it.
reboot.
We had to force reboot. But it was because I had freaking 22 tabs open for years. And so it's like, all right, we got some recurring revenue. If we had to plan a convenient time to fall apart, now would be the time. And so it's wild. And it's like, it doesn't mean that you're going to all be on, you're never going to be happy about that. Like, I was still like mad at myself and being like, what the heck is wrong with me? Like, I have every reason to feel more confident in myself than I've ever felt. And yet I didn't, which was so wild, which is why our identities truly, like, until I experienced it, there were things I rolled my eyes at. One was that money is not gonna like solve your problems. It solves a lot. It does
It
until a certain
does.
point, and then it creates new ones. And then the second is that if you hinge your identity and your self-concept on your success, you're always, unlike external successes, like you're always going to be chasing it. And I was proof because I had every logical reason to be hella confident with myself at the time. And I just was like, they're gonna find me out, like, and so it's like, it's really is, it showed me like I have to constantly be fighting for the person that I'm becoming and like receiving the evidence that I'm creating, versus like a lot of what we do sometimes is like, oh my gosh, I just got lucky, and like and then we use it against ourselves. So it's like we have to be the creators of our identity. We can't attach it to success, otherwise we'll actually use success against ourselves too.
Yeah. No, and you said something that's really, really great of just like I just got lucky, things just happened, and like you said, that's that identity portion of it.
Yeah.
And then also I think the work portion of it, especially for women of color who are just like, okay, I need to know more so I can prove myself so I can like keep going with this. I think it creates this cycle. And
Mhm.
so a couple questions come to mind. Number one, do you think you could be hardworking and not burn out? Like, is it like, can you reform? Like, oh no, I work hard, but I also like have balanced that. And then my second question is, how have you addressed that identity portion so that you aren't as beholden to those external markers of success so that you can
Yeah.
do the work that's necessary?
Oh, those are really good questions. I think with the first question, around like, can you work hard and not burn out? I wouldn't have known how to answer that before figured it out. To be honest, I'm still in the process of figuring it out. I would say in the last few months. And the answer is yes. And what it really takes is your body trusting you to actually rest, to have work time and non work time. When it doesn't trust you, it never shuts off. So you wind up working longer to get the same amount of work done because you never like shut the laptop down for it to like recuperate.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to redevelop trust with my body to say, okay, I'm working right now, but I'm actually going to rest, or I'm going to like watch a show, or I'm going to go do something fun with my daughter. In the past, that wasn't true. It's like I would do that, but my brain would actually not be offline, even if my body was, even if I was somewhere with my daughter, I was still thinking about like work and being on and responding to messages while she was in the bathtub. And so, what I think that allowed me to do is work more focused when I actually did sit down to work. And I don't think I realized how much leaky energy I had around working before. And it was for that reason. And I used to blame, not to say that this isn't a reason, but like I have ADHD. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I need to work on my ADHD. I don't actually feel the effects of my ADHD the way that I did before. Like, I don't even have to I'm not even taking Adderall. Like, I just will sit down and I'm like, I believe myself when I'm like, we're going to shut the laptop off at 5 and we're going to go pick up pie from my parents. And then we're going to like finish watching the show that we were watching. So that's, I think, a big part is you can't work effectively if you aren't actually, if your mind and body don't trust you. To have working hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for the second part around, I forget what the second question was.
The identity that you need to build in order.
My
Yeah.
gosh, that one, oh, that one is, to be honest, was like the hardest one. And again, probably not a question I could have answered even at the beginning of the year, like before my last launch. And I think that in order for me to have my identity and begin to detach it from my results, I had to like learn to love the version of me that wasn't succeeding on paper. And
Mm.
that was really, really hard because I noticed a lot that I was very impatient with her and annoyed with her and frustrated with her, that she was still having feelings and emotions and that she couldn't just get into action. And so, in that sense, I was telling her, I only love you when you have flashy results to showcase people, and other people will only love you and want to choose you when you have these flashy results and you're able to get into action and do mind over matter. And I'm still on that journey, to be honest. But I am in a much better place than I've ever been. And I think what that forced me to do was say, like, who am I separate from my results? And how do I show myself that I love myself even when I'm having a hard time? And so I think that's probably the hardest part, because I think we conditionally like love and approve of ourselves all the time without realizing. And there's a lot of self-criticism and shame, and it worked to get us here most of the time. And then what happens is it doesn't, because that's what caused me to burn out, was all of my inner critic and my self-criticism saying people are going to leave you now that you have too many clients, you're not going to be able to hold it, you're not going to be able to hit this result. And so it was like, oh, my relationship with myself was kind of crappy. And that's what caused me to go, okay, well, let me just like go into a hermit. So I think that's the biggest thing, is in
Yeah.
order for you to not, like, I think about with any identity, it's kind of like, who am I separate from my results, and how am I talking to myself and loving myself regardless of what the external outcomes are.
Mm. Yeah, no, and I think that makes so much sense because, like you said, what it got you to this point. And I
Yeah.
think that our brains or just ourselves,
Hmm.
we look to what we have previously done to get success. And so shaming yourself and doing all those things, it's just like, oh, yeah, that worked. So it's just like, oh, you're not good
Yeah.
enough. So it's just like, okay, well, like, if you say that you're not good enough more, then you want to outrun that and work that, improve that, and
Yeah.
you'll get results. And it has
Hmm.
worked probably for years. I know for myself, it got me through high school, college, like school.
Yeah.
Like I have so much proof and evidence that like shaming myself works because it
Hmm.
did.
Yeah.
And then it taps out because we're doing something new in
Yeah.
entrepreneurship and business. It's just like you're doing something brand new and you've actually reached that higher limit of what that can take you. And like you keep shaming yourself saying like, but it's worked for years, it's worked for years. And like, that's true, but like you gotta upgrade your package to something else because
Yeah.
you're actually tapped out of all of that. It's not helping anymore.
Absolutely. That's very much like how right now I'm kind of on a theme of scaling beyond survival mode and like what that actually looks like. It's kind of like why does success why can we only reach success to a certain point using the way that we've always been? And it really is, I think, that we reach a certain point of like, once you know that you could make money using survival mode and using inner critic, like with your inner critic, if you absolutely had to, then another part starts to interject. Because I believe, like, if it was between me and not being able to pay rent and getting evicted, I would figure out, you better believe I would figure out how to make money and I'd probably
Mm-hmm.
make a lot of money because my survival mode is like I will figure out how to make money, but there's another part that's like, oh, wait. I don't know that I agree in this season, and then that's what the where the internal turmoil starts, where the inner critic starts to kind of ruin stuff, whereas before they were making stuff happen, and so that's a big
Mm-hmm.
like I feel like that's a shift that not a lot of people talk about that I'm starting to shed light on because I didn't experience it myself until I felt like safer in my business to be like, oh, the success doesn't actually make me be nicer to myself. I'm still being mean to myself and I'm still holding this over my own head. Fascinating. What do I need to do differently?
Yep. Yep. No. And that could be its own separate, like full
Oh, yeah.
on tangent of things because, like, there's so much that's there.
Yes.
Um, but
Yeah.
I think that people listening, you said something interesting where you were at like half capacity and still got extraordinary results from that. Um, and then just thinking from like my marketer side of the brain of just like, what is it that you're doing so that
Hmm.
you can create from that space where just like, okay, I know how I can start to work at a capacity where it's actually going to be good and more sustainable for me. Because like a high
Hmm.
functioning person's like C minus level effort is actually still like pretty high
It
for
is.
everyone else. And so
Hmm.
from like a marketing standpoint, like what do you attribute that to be? Because it wasn't obviously like the volume of things, which I
No.
think a lot of people say like, okay, if we're launching, if we're doing something like check stuff out, which I think to some degree, especially if you're still trying to figure out a lot of things, like you
Yes,
do need a
you
volume
do.
game for things.
Hmm.
But I think for you, like give us a breakdown of just like even in the midst of, everything that was going on, how were you still able to, you know, be able to make sure that your business was going to stay afloat and get results that
Yeah.
were like fantastic.
This is where I actually relied on my marketer hat more, which is why I think it's so important for entrepreneurs to develop marketing skills and not just buy other people's strategies and try to implement them. Because, like all marketers know, like you actually can't buy someone's strategy. You can only create one based on your own business, your own ideal clients, your own data, your own everything.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever you do that, what you're actually doing is copying someone's tactics. So tactics are just like, how do you do a thing, how do you whatever. And so this is where I'm like, if I didn't have marketing skills that I just happened to have from before I had a business, I wouldn't have been able to think about it. I would have gone into it and said, okay, I am going to produce a quarter of the amount of marketing assets. Let me just be creative. Let me just think of a thing. I actually couldn't rely on my creativity. Number one, I didn't feel creative.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, I didn't need to because I had data. So like a big part of what I did was saying, okay, I had a brand new OBM at the time. So we really didn't have a lot of time to do a bunch of things because basically they started and we had to hit the ground running. And so a lot of what I did was like, let me look back at the last few rounds of this program. Let me look at who has gotten the best results and what did they have in common, And if I was going out there with a more like stronger, more potent message, who am I calling in? And so part of what I realized with that was like we had kind of two groups, like people who joined, they joined for like me and like an emotional reason and my identity, but they actually didn't have foundational building blocks that they needed, that you could still do it, but it's a lot harder. And so I realized like I need to actually look at my data, figure out who my best clients are, look at where am I talking to almost like earlier problems or like getting into action problems versus I'm already in action, but I'm over actioning. And so we refined the messaging and the last launch. And then I said, what is this higher level client going to need in order to make a decision? Because the higher level client isn't going to buy on they like me and my story. They're just like, that's fine. But also like, can you help me? So I basically was like, if I only was going to put out a smaller amount of creative and marketing, which I did, I didn't post as much, I didn't send as many emails. I spoke to a more specific client. I looked at like who got the best results. I looked at the words that they were actually saying that were consistent about what they wanted so that I didn't need to be creative. I was literally like, what are they actually saying? And then I was like, okay, we have stellar client results. Why did the client results not sell the program last time? Okay, it's because the client results were told from like a first person perspective, and then people had to fish out what did that mean. So we did case studies instead, and they were repeatable. So every single time your brain would be like, oh, this, and this for every single person. And what I wanted them to know was this works for everybody. And so I was like, if I'm going to relaunch this program and I don't have, so it's basically what wound up happening was the energy that I would have spent on volume and reels and a ton of emails and all of this stuff. Instead, I had to just like, in my little hermit era, this was actually really good. Hunker down and look at what has the program told me? What are my clients telling me? What is my business telling me? And what do those kind of clients need to buy this time? Why didn't they buy last time when I have such great results? And that was the answer. So it's like we actually do need, as we absolutely have to as business owners, develop the skill of marketing and know how our business is talking to us. Otherwise, we're just going to rely on being creative. And once you've had a program or an offer for a long time, you're not supposed to just be creative. You're supposed to go look at what is the business telling you to do. In the same way that in my marketing job, I couldn't come to my boss and be like, I have an idea for a campaign. They're going to be like, I don't care what you want. Like, why do you want it? How do we know that this is going to make us money? So as business owners, we have to be marketers, skilled marketers, whether we like it or not, or we don't get the money to serve the people we want to serve.
Yeah, no. Anybody that knows me who has worked with me privately, they know that, oh, Danielle, like, I don't know what to post. I don't know what to look at your data.
Yeah.
Go back
It's not about what
and
you want.
look at those things. It tells you literally all of the answers and things that you need to know. So
Yeah.
you're not guessing. You're not assuming like, oh, I don't know. I don't know what I feel like. Well, it doesn't, respectfully, it doesn't matter what you feel like. It matters what's
Yeah.
going to be helpful for the people that you want to serve. If you actually
Hmm.
want to serve them, listen to what they are saying and telling you because it will give you the answer. And Set Your Launch is proof of that, of
Yeah.
just being very focused, very honed in,
Yeah.
and getting you all those results there.
Yeah. So it's like marketing skills help you overcome burnout because you know what to do and what not to do. And it's like, it's kind of
Yeah.
like if I could only do a quarter of what I did before, how could that be the most potent work that I've ever done? And it actually is true. Like you could put out a quarter of the amount of creative and to get better results because you're asking yourself different questions. And I think that when we're in survival mode or like we're used to over functioning, we actually will wildly resist that because we're going to be like, that's not enough. Like, if I have more time, I need to put out more posts. But what you also could do there is cloud people with just so much information going in different directions. So I was like, no, this, like, it's almost like the quality of your thoughts matter more than the volume. And that's a switch as well.
Yeah. Let's talk about that because I know that we talked a little bit earlier about just like it's you, it's the laptop, you need to create and come up with things. And I
Mm-hmm.
think people say that, okay, you have two people with marketing backgrounds are talking about becoming better marketers, doing different things. Like, sure, that's easy for you. Like, that's your background, that's your
Yeah.
experience with things. But when it comes time to, okay, like I have, an onboarding form or I have, a transcript of a sales call that I did, and I'm pulling that up to go and create because I do want to be that focused and narrow and really talk to the people.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you, what is it that you tell people when they're sitting down to actually create, but like all
Mhm.
of those other things are coming up to mind? Like
Yeah.
how do you have them to approach that situation so that the noise, the shame, the identity of like not good enough fall away so that you can
Mhm.
actually write the caption, write the post, write the thing to
Oh,
build
yeah.
up your business?
Oh, yeah. So a big part of this, honestly, is like developing evidence gathering as a skill, meaning in order for you to have any sort of recipe, right? Like you have to taste it. So it's almost like if you were cooking and you didn't want to taste it as you were going, and then but you want to keep changing stuff. And then it tastes good, and then someone's like, "Oh my gosh, this is such an amazing recipe. Like what did you put in it?" And you're like, "Oh, I don't know. I just like threw a bunch of stuff in a bowl." But you weren't actually looking and paying attention to what you put in the bowl. Of course, you wouldn't be able to repeat it, not because you don't have the skill, but because you weren't like noting what the heck you were doing. And a big part of the reason we don't do that is because survival brain isn't interested in what's working. It's only interested in what's wrong. Because when you feel like you're under threat, you're just like, if everything's fine, it's literally blank slate. You'll just look at whatever. So I actually, for my clients, because they're high functioning and operated on inner critic, I had to create like systems within my coaching and documentation that helps them to actually look at like what is happening, what's working and what's not just from like where did your leads come from, like all of those things, but also in like what were the helpful thoughts you were having, what were some of the things that you released or stopped worrying about. So it's almost like a bookmark of what you were doing and who you were being, so that and I'll make them do it, and I'm like, give me a success receipts right now, like send it to me right now. And not only do they document that, but I also have them do a process called belief bookmarking. So it's kind of like when you actually something is working, know that tomorrow you're going to forget about it. Either you're going to forget the details of it or you're just going to not believe it. That I'm like, document it, screenshot it, send yourself a voice memo in the future for when you forget it. Like we have to start dropping the little breadcrumbs or we're going to lose our way back. And that is not, that supports both the identity, but it also is data gathering. So it's kind of like after in corporate, when I had a launch, we couldn't just do a launch and then peace out. We'd have to audit
Hmm.
everything. So
There's
that becomes
always a report that goes afterwards. What worked? What didn't work? What are we
exactly.
going to do different this time? What do we need to keep doing
Yeah.
every time?
And
Yeah.
so many people realized like their next, the thing that was working or that they needed to do next was always right under their nose. It's just that they were, giving somebody else credit or something else credit or saying that it just happened or saying that they just got lucky. So they never feel safe in their businesses. So it's kind of like it documents things like what messaging is working, where your leads are coming from, like it's documenting like what your natural gifts are, like in terms of communication, like what are your gifts, and then also like what are the thoughts you're having, what are all the different things. And it's like it's harder for you to just say that it was a fluke when you're actually documenting it as you go along. And what supports the business from a data perspective also supports the identity, because you kind of have to take credit when you're documenting it.
Hmm.
So that's a big part of it. And then that's something that we can look at and say, okay, what do we want to do moving forward? Like, what is this telling you about maybe 3 things you want to continue to do or stop doing based on like what this is showing you? So that's a big part of what I do, from like teaching them how to gather data and support their identity. And then there's like simplifying what marketing is, because I think that when we can simplify how to think about marketing, then people start to think like marketers, which is kind of
Hmm.
another piece.
Yeah. Yeah. This conversation, I feel like I could go for like another hour. So I'm gonna spare the people. But what I would like to close out on is, I know that there are things that you always say that people need to unlearn in
Mm,
order to start going, having the business, having the life that they want to have. And so what I want to ask you today is, what are some of the rules and the strategies that you're just like, people need to unlearn this in order to start
mm.
going after and creating the business and the life that they want to have?
Yes. So I think one is that in order for you to create anything that is profitable and like worthwhile, it the most the biggest competitive advantage that you can bring is bringing in elements of like you, your story, who you are, because people connect with stories, people connect with brands more than they connect with like problem solution. And that in itself is going to make you not just like stand out, but it helps you kind of create more of like a community around your brand versus just people who are buying for the solution. So I think that that's one thing, is like you don't have to keep yourself separate from your brand, but you also don't need to, this doesn't mean like coming in and like oversharing everything about your life, but more so about the why behind it, what shaped your unique perspective, what shaped your lens, how does your background influence the way that you serve clients and your experience. This could be professional experience, it doesn't have to be childhood stuff. So really it's that, I'd say like the person, the leader behind the business is probably like your best competitive advantage if you can integrate it in. And then I think there's so much, like I think in terms of like unlearning or just things that people get wrong, is also that your business can look a lot of different ways and still be successful. Like I think that we tend to look at people that have like huge platforms and all of that as being successful. There are wildly successful, profitable people who like mostly live their life offline. You'd go to their Instagram, you wouldn't really think that they're as big of a deal as they are, but they actually are really successful and they have this reputation. So I think that that's another thing, is that like success can look a lot of different ways. But it doesn't matter at the end of the day if you reach a version of success and it's not like what you want, you
That's
know?
so powerful. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that, to wrap up and, to kind of sum up what we've talked about here is being good, okay, within your own skin, creating something that you're really, I think, passionate about. But I don't think that it has to be
Yeah.
like yes, like red hot passion, but also just like, no, like this
Yeah.
is something that I want to be doing,
Yeah.
and to
Yeah.
really help people, and
Hmm.
doing it in a way that you are not feeling crappy about yourself every single time that you're going about doing that. And I think
Yeah.
that everything that you've shared just really points to when you are doing something that you really have a heart for doing, when you are thinking well of yourself and you create safety within yourself, then you can start
Hmm.
creating the marketing, the presence, the container that's really going to
Yeah.
be nurturing for you and everybody involved. So I
Yeah.
just want to say thank you so much
Thank
for sharing all
you.
of this. If anybody wants to connect with you and to stay engaged in your world, how can they go about doing that?
Yes. So the place that I hang out most is on Instagram at Mariela De La Mora. It'll probably be in
Mm-hmm.
the show notes.
Yep.
Um, and also I have a podcast and it's called Cycle Breakers and Moneymakers. So on there we do talk about the cycles that we break on the journey of being entrepreneurs. So, like all of the personal development and all of the healing and all of the patterns that we break on the journey to creating more. So, hang out with me on Cycle Breakers and Moneymakers. I also have a new private podcast that is specific around how to turn who you are into your biggest competitive advantage, since we talked about that today. And it's called Identity ROI. And I'll send you that. So, it's in the show notes. And
Mm-hmm.
there'll be information there about working with me as well. The doors to my mastermind reclamation are opening on October 1st. So that'll all be in there too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Honestly, I told her before, like this is honestly a selfish ass. I just wanted to like
I
chit
love
chat
this.
and like pick your brain
Yeah,
about
I loved
everything.
having this conversation with you.
Um, and so I'm just glad that it's actually going to be beneficial for more than just me. So like you guys
Yeah.
are lucky. But thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you,
been a pleasure
Danielle.
having you on. And yeah, until next time, everyone. Well, we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
If you want more marketing that works right in your inbox, head to the show notes and sign up for the email list. You'll be the first to know how you can work with me on mastering your marketing.